That is an impossible presentation to follow. I mean, really, isn't that outstanding? And it actually sets up part of what I wanted to speak to you about briefly today, which is the biggest issue that is polarizing America, that is separating this country, that divides people. That big issue isn't how much we spend on infrastructure. The big issue isn't about guns. The big issue isn't about even human life. It's not even the abortion issue. It's not taxes. It's not spending. The big issue dividing this country right now is, what are we going to teach our children about their country? Are we going to try to raise a new generation that is ashamed or empowered? Are we going to raise a new generation that is grateful or guilty? And there is a world of difference between teaching people to feel guilty about being American, embarrassed about being American, and teaching them to be proud and above all grateful, and to remember to whom gratitude is due. Let me give you an example of something that happened in my life recently. I had chosen, my most recent book is called God's Hand on America, and the subtitle is Divine Providence in the Modern Era. And I had requested a painting for the cover of the book, and in the publishing world, in the preparation for my book, there are a lot of people who say, you can't use that painting. Why not? Because it looks like this. Do we have it up here? Yeah. Now, probably most of you have never seen this painting. It was one of the most famous paintings of the 19th century. And the point that people made when they were objecting to it was, this would identify with Christian nationalism. It would identify with this strange vision that somehow there are marks in the landscape that indicate that America is a religious nation. You can't do that. Okay, that painting by Thomas Moran, great British painter, was actually the sensation. It was the most viewed thing in the Centennial Exhibition of 1876, celebrating 100 years of American greatness in Philadelphia. But here's the amazing thing. This is not some fantasy. It's not some vision. It's a painting of a real mountain in Colorado, as viewed from Gray's Peak, and initially discovered, as people say, or used to be able to say, by a guy named Samuel Bowles, who was a friend of Emily Dickinson. He was an abolitionist. He was an editor in Springfield. And when he had been tramping around hearing reports about this mountain with a great big cross on it, he actually saw it, and he wrote, "It was not beauty, it was sublimity. It was not power, nor order, nor color. It was majesty. It was not a part, it was the whole. It was not man, but God. That was about before us and in us. Mountains and mountains everywhere. Over one of the largest and finest, the snowfields lay in the form of an immense cross. It is as if God has set his sign, his seal, his promise there, a beacon upon the very height and center of the continent, to all its people and all its generations." Okay, was it a real vision? 5 years later, other explorers, led by a photographer named William Henry Jackson, who went up with pack mules and big photographic plates, they captured this vision of what the actual mountain looked like. Okay, it's incredible, right? This is from 1873. It was on a Sunday morning. He was worshiping, and then there was a rainbow, and then this. And this painting, by the way, the Pope hung a copy of that painting of this photograph in his private apartment. In any event, the point about all of this is that it was not created by human beings. I know we're in Orlando, the world of theme parks, and they can create anything. But this was before Colorado was a state, and there were no Native Americans risking their lives. This mountain is 14,050 feet high. It's a 14er. It's one of the highest mountains in the country. And it became known as the Mount of the Holy Cross. It became a national monument. Then years later, after it became a national monument, one of the sides of the cross fell in an avalanche, and they took away the monument status, which was outrageous. This is the most famous photograph of mountains in the 19th century. Okay, so what is the point of all this? People write off things about America, details about America, say it's a happy accident. It just happened. But when you have a pattern of happy accidents, it's still a pattern. And that's what we have to recognize about the God-given grace that this country has received. Let me give you one quick example from the same period of time, and I write about this in God's Hand on America. How is it that a nearly fatal carriage accident in 1865 in April actually led to America winning the Cold War? Sounds preposterous, right? But things don't happen by accident. There is a pattern in human events, and there's a pattern in the happy accidents of America. What that carriage accident involved was the Secretary of State, William Henry Seward. He almost died. They had to put a brace on his jaw so that it would recover. It was a metal brace wrapped in canvas so that 9 days later, when Lincoln was assassinated, and part of the assassination plot was to kill Seward at the same time, the intended murderer took a huge knife standing above his bedside, plunged it down toward his jugular vein, plunged 4 times, 1, 2, 3, 4. The knife blade broke because he was wearing a metal brace on his neck. And why did that lead to America's victory in the Cold War? Because there's no way we would have acquired Alaska without William Henry Seward. It was a single-minded decision on the part of a Secretary of State during an impeachment crisis with President Johnson. I mean, all of this is really remarkable. And there's one more remarkable thing. In the middle of Seward, the Secretary of State, who recovered because he had had a carriage accident, because the intended assassin, had plunged his knife against a metal plate, that same guy, almost inexplicably, and he never wrote about it, while he was filing papers on his desk in 1867 in the middle of the Alaska negotiations, he also acquired a much smaller piece of real estate, actually 3 square miles, 3 little islands in the Pacific. It was called Midway Atoll. And many of you know about the Battle of Midway. They call it the Miracle at Midway. My chapter on Midway is called the 5-Minute Miracle, which is astonishing. People who were non-believers who saw what happened, where in 5 minutes the entire course of World War II and human history changed because squadrons of planes from 3 different aircraft carriers found each other over open ocean and then sank 4 Japanese major ships, including 3 carriers, the pride of their fleet, in 5 minutes. The ace Japanese pilot, the guy who had led the attack on Pearl Harbor, was named Matsuo Fushida. And he saw that. He didn't participate in the flight because he had appendicitis the day before. He witnessed that. After the war, he became a Christian believer. He actually appeared with Billy Graham 9 times. His biography is called God's Samurai. Now, what does all of this indicate? It indicates what Seward felt, what Fushida felt, is that when you are blessed, when you are saved, it doesn't give you special privileges, it gives you special responsibilities. And that is exactly what we have and exactly what we need to pay off. And there is no question at all that when people talk about American exceptionalism, it's not that America is exceptionally guilty, it's not that America is exceptionally cruel or exploitative or racist or evil, it is that America is exceptionally blessed. And that means that we need to return the blessing to the world. We have so profoundly helped this country, this world, through this country. And as a very proud American Jew, somebody who's going to be rushing home for Shabbat right after I speak to you here, I can tell you that it is enormously important to keep in mind what President Reagan kept in mind. He was spared assassination by the smallest of margins, knew that that meant that he owed God, not that he had special privileges or special powers. Let us teach that to our children, to feel not privileged, but to feel obligated. Obligated to serve our country, to serve God, to serve justice, to serve the cause of faith and freedom, and to do whatever we can do to instill a portion of pride and gratitude, because it's not just for the good of the country, it's for the good of each individual. Feeling guilty, feeling downcast, feeling apologetic, feeling negative, feeling aggrieved makes for unhappy people. We are a happy people. We are a celebratory people. Let us be a proud people always who emphasize gratitude over guilt and acknowledge that we are privileged to live in the greatest nation on God's green earth. God bless you and everything you're doing. Thank you.